it's great to see that Peter and Andrew accomplished their assignments, but now the entire Pixar crew has to face a new challenge unlike anything they've ever faced. Have an outsider be in charge of a project. A challenge that ended up becoming The Incredibles. It's the story of Bob Parr, a former superhero under the name Mr. Incredible with super strength, who lives a normal suburban life with his wife and kids, in which they also have superpowers as well. One day, when Bob got fired from his job as an insurance claim adjuster, he got a call to go to an island where he must use his superpowers to stop a giant robot ball, which he accepted to do. But it turned out to be a trap planned by a former fan of his, Syndrome, who wants revenge on all the supers when Mr. Incredible told him to fly home. Now it's up to Bob and his family to use their powers to stop Syndrome. Brad Bird got the idea of making a superhero movie partly from the comics done by Jim Steranko, who was well known in the comics industry for making the series Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. As for the family aspect, Brad got it from his personal life during the 90s. While he was making The Iron Giant at Warner Bros. Animation, he had a very hard time to balance out his career and his family, fearing that if he focuses more on one, then he'll lose the other. During that time, John Lasseter always wanted to get Brad to come to Pixar, since they were college buddies at Cal Arts. John first asked Brad in 1995, but he said he couldn't. When he left Fox, John asked again if he could do it now, but he said he couldn't again because he just got a deal to make The Iron Giant. Then after, when The Iron Giant bombed at the box office because of crappy marketing, John asked again, and Brad said, okay. When Brad joined the team, John told him that this would be the perfect opportunity to make the film he always wanted to make. So it comes to no surprise that his choice was a movie about a family of superheroes. He was gonna save it as a hand-drawn animated feature, but hey, he's with Pixar now. I think that sacrifice would be worth it. Now, the reason why John brought Brad in is to shake things up at Pixar. Yes, they've made 5 successful films in a row, but keep in mind that they've only made 5 films. They need someone like Brad to come in and make the crew learn all over again by focusing more attention to detail and not being too overconfident that it'll end up being a hit anyway. For the voice of Violet, they got a contributor of Public Radio International called Sarah Vowell. Similar to convince Tom Hanks to be Woody in Toy Story, they did an animation test with Violet that has some audio of Sarah's segment from The American Life so they can convince her to do it.
This is like a cartoon. Oh my god. Oh, there's smoke everywhere. It's like the 4th of July.
For the animation of the movie, Brad brought some people he previously worked with on The Iron Giant, including character designer Tony Fucilli and Teddy Newton. Along with Brad, they learned how to move their 2D animation skills that they know from The Iron Giant and try to incorporate that into computer animation. When making an animated film, there's always that one element that is considered to be the hardest thing to animate. In The Incredibles, though, there's none of that because everything in the movie is considered the hardest thing to do. You name it, it's in there. An all-human cast, different styles of hair, short and long, hair underwater, hair blowing in the wind, and that's just the character aspects. There's also water, fire, all different kinds of smoke, and explosions. Lots and lots of explosions. For the score of the film, Brad wanted... Wait a minute, darling. You seem to be forgetting about the very crucial element of computer animation that this film contains a lot of. What the Edna mode? What are you... How did you...
Relax, darling. Details are not important these days. Anyways, what I was talking about was the clothing. The texture, the stitching, and all the different fabric that goes through earth, wind, water, and fire are all incorporated here. In total, there are 95 different wardrobes worn by the characters. Because the animators had a hard time to make them look grand, they brought in a tailor to explain the details of clothing to them.
Wow, I completely forgot about that. Well, thanks for being...
By the way, since I am here, I might as well talk about myself.
I don't think that would...
You people should probably know that some believe I was actually based on a fellow costume designer named Edith Head, who has made costumes for countless of films and even received 8 Academy Awards. When Brad Bird, or as I like to call him, the real Syndrome, because that guy was actually modeled after him, look it up.
That's kind of my job.
When he was recording the temporary voice of me, the crew realized that looking for another person to do the voice would be pointless. Even Lily Tomlin, who was supposed to be my voice actress, turned the part down because she thinks that Brad has got it. Well, darling, I'd like to thank you for inviting me, for sharing this with your audience.
But I didn't even invite you.
And by the way, darling, I shall send you an email about your suit. You look like a flamboyant hobo. I'll make you a better one.
Hey, wait a minute!
What the fridge happened? Oh, what part am I up to again? It's gonna be water, fire, Brad wanted to... Oh, right, the music, right. Anyways...
Brad wanted to get John Barry to do the score of the film, mostly because he wanted to have that James Bond feeling in the music. But because Barry believed that his music can be imitated but can't be duplicated, he said no. So when looking for another composer, he managed to get Michael Kamen, but during the middle of his work, he died. After that, they managed to have Michael Giacchino to fill in. To get that jazzy 1960s style of music, recording engineer Dan Wallen brought the entire orchestra into one room and playing against each other, or what he likes to call it, the right way. When it was released on November 5th, 2004, it was the first Pixar film to be released as a PG-rated film. What does that have to do with how it did? Well, nothing. Just a little tidbit you might want to know. Anyways, the critics loved the film, saying that not only is it as fun to watch as the last Pixar films, but also thanks to Brad Bird, it's even more action-packed than any other animated film. At the box office, it earned more than $261 million domestically and more than $631 million worldwide. It managed to earn 10 Annie Awards, a Grammy Award, and even 2 Oscars for Best Animated Feature and Best Sound Editing. As of 2012, that's the only Oscar Pixar won outside of Best Animated Feature. On March 2009, Boom Studios released a comic book series based on The Incredibles, and on October 24, 2005, THQ released a video game sequel called The Incredibles: Rise of the Underminer, which, unlike the movie, it was only considered as okay. Now at this point, a lot of people see Pixar as the king of animation, where no matter what they make, it'll be golden. But I like to remind you guys that just because Pixar is the king, doesn't mean that they're proud of it. During the time The Incredibles was released, the media were starting to believe that in order for an animated movie to be successful, it had to be computer animated. This statement can easily be proven by the box office results. For example, computer animated films like DreamWorks' Shrek 2 and Pixar's The Incredibles are both considered major hits, while hand-drawn animated films during that time like DreamWorks' Sinbad and Disney's Home on the Range are considered box office bombs. At that point, both DreamWorks and Disney announced that they would no longer do hand-drawn animation and do nothing but computer animation, which means hundreds and hundreds of layoffs for many animators. And because that it was all thanks to the king of animation that made computers in and hand drawn out, Pixar was ashamed. But that's just the tip of the iceberg for Pixar's problems. In 2004, when Pixar's contract with Disney was finishing, Steve Jobs wanted to make a new deal with Disney in which Disney would only distribute their movies and Pixar would have all the profits for themselves. Of course, Disney didn't like the idea, and after a huge fight with Jobs and Disney CEO Michael Eisner, Steve decided to look for another distributor, leaving the rest of Pixar scared that if another company merged with Pixar, then they would become nothing but a factory that makes animated features for the sake of money. And if that wasn't enough, Disney wanted to make a new animation studio down at Glendale, California called Circle 7 Animation, where they would do nothing but make computer animated sequels of Pixar movies. Because, you know, Disney earned such a wonderful reputation when it comes to their sequels. All hope and pride seemed to be lost for Pixar. But just when things look bad, faith steps in and saw them through. In 2005, Michael Eisner was replaced by Bob Iger as the new CEO of Disney, and luckily for them, Bob would have an idea to solve both Pixar's relationship with Disney and the hand-drawn animation problem. On January 24th, 2006, Disney bought Pixar for a total of $7.4 billion, and the three big heads of Pixar got something very special. For Ed Catmull, not only he's still the president of Pixar, but now he's also the president of Walt Disney Animation Studios. For Steve Jobs, he stepped down as CEO of Pixar and became a part of the Disney Board of Directors. And for good old John Lasseter, he became Chief Creative Officer for both Pixar and Disney, and he also became the Principal Creative Officer at Walt Disney Imagineering. And if you guys are wondering about Circle 7, well, that pretty much got shut down fast. So now that all things are settled with Disney and Pixar, their first animated feature that they released as a dynamic duo was Cars. It's about Lightning McQueen, a cocky rookie race car who thinks he can go big and get the ultimate racing prize, the Piston Cup. While on his way to California to the championship, he accidentally got himself into Route 66, where lies a small rundown town called Radiator Springs. Of course, at first, McQueen wants to get out of there quickly to get to the cup, but by time, he starts to befriend the local residents of the town, and learns that maybe there's more to life than winning and trophies. The idea of a movie about cars is something that John Lasseter always wanted to do. Ever since he was a kid, he was so fascinated by cars and races and Grand Prix and all those kinds of things. Plus, it helps that his dad is a car parts manager. The first idea was brought up in 1998 called The Yellow Car, which would have been an Ugly Duckling style story about an electric car in a gas-consuming cars world. Wait a minute. I smell an environmental message in that thing. Anyways, it would have been released after A Bug's Life, but then they scrapped the entire thing and put the focus more on Toy Story 2. In 1999, John took a cross-country family road trip to get away from work. John got so inspired from what he saw that 2 years later, he went on another road trip, but this time with 11 other animators and Route 66 historian Michael Wallace. Mike would later on become the voice of the sheriff in the movie. During that trip, they encountered a lot of places and people that would eventually become a part of the film, like the Cozy Dog Drive-In in Springfield, Illinois would become the Cozy Cone Motel, or the self-proclaimed hippie artist Bob Waldmeyer would become Fillmore in the movie. Originally, the movie was supposed to be named Route 66, but just so nobody would mix it up with the 1960s show of the same name, they changed it to what we know as Cars. Because, you know, that's usually such a major problem with popular movies these days. Like, when people talk to me about the Avengers, I always get confused because I thought they were talking about the British spy series from the 60s. The main character, Lightning McQueen, was named after an animator in the studio, Glenn Mcqueen, who unfortunately passed away in 2002 from melanoma while making Finding Nemo. While we're on the subject, this was the last time that Paul Newman, the voice of Doc in the movie, did before he passed away from lung cancer in 2008. However, Paul said that his performance as Doc was the best he's ever done since The Verdict. To get a sense like we're watching a real racing event, they brought in sports commentators Bob Costas and Darrell Waltrip to commentate on the races Mcqueen's on in the movie. For the design of the cars, they wanted to put the eyes on the windshield instead of what cartoons usually put them, the headlights, because they can express their emotions more easily. This was an idea they got from one of John's favorite animated shorts, Susie the Little Blue Coupe. Now that they knew what they looked like, the animators then used special computer platforms to design the cars on computer that are a lot like the ones they use to design real cars. As for the buttload of computers they already have, they are pretty much super powered. They are able to run 4 times as fast as the ones used to make The Incredibles, and 1,000 times faster than the ones used in Toy Story. Also, the time to render each frame took only 17 hours. To anyone who bet that the rendering time would go higher than Finding Nemo's,
you lose! Good day, sir!
Not only was this the last film for Paul Newman, but this was also the last film that animator Joe Ranft worked on before he died in 2005 in a car crash. Along with Corpse Bride, this movie was dedicated to him. Originally, the film was supposed to be released on November 4th, 2005, but it was delayed for 2 reasons. One, because of the big fiasco with the end of contract with Disney thing, and 2, it was because Steve Jobs wanted to release it during the summertime so the DVD sales can happen during the holiday season. When it was released on June 9th, 2006, it didn't do well as the other Pixar films, but that doesn't mean that it was a failure at all. The critics seemed to like it a bit, saying that even if the story isn't as strong as their previous films, it's still worth watching it for its innovative animation. In the box office, it did well also, with $244 million domestically and about $462 million worldwide. It got nominated for 2 Oscars for Best Original Song and Best Animated Feature, but lost to both Happy Feet and An Inconvenient Truth. But it did win a Golden Globe and 2 Annies, which one of them was Best Animated Feature. When it comes to its merchandise, it was godforsaken legendary. With all the toys and small cars and stuff like that, they made a total sale of around $5 billion! When the DVD of the film was released, there was a spin-off short called Mater and the Ghostlight, where Mater is being haunted by a blue light. In 2007, Disney made an attraction called Cars 4 Roues Rally, or Cars Race Rally, and since I said it in French, you could guess it's at the Walt Disney Studios Park in Disneyland, Paris. Okay, maybe not the Walt Disney Studios Park thing, but anyways, it's like the Mad Teacups ride where you sit on a car and it just makes you spin from time to time. A year later, they started releasing a series of animated shorts called Cars Toons, Mater's Tall Tales, which would star Mater telling a story to his friends that he was in, and feature some other characters from the movie like Mcqueen. And just to let you guys know, the Ghostlight short is not a part of the Cars Toons. In 2007, Brad Bird came back to Pixar to cook up a new and amazing dish called Ratatouille. Oh wow, that was a terrible pun. I'm really sorry. I promise I will never do that again. It's the story of Remy, a sewer rat who dreams to be a gourmet chef. And no people, not for other rats, but in an actual 5-star elegant restaurant that we people would go and eat. If we have the money for it. Anyways, as luck would have it for Remy, he lives right under the restaurant of his idol, Chef Auguste Gusteau, and enters the kitchen of it. As a rat, that's not the brightest idea. Remy then befriends an amateur chef named Linguini, and he found a way to control him by pulling his hair. So with that, they are able to make some of the best dishes in French cuisine. But now that Linguini's fame keeps rising, they try their best to keep the secret about the true mastermind behind all this. The idea all started when it came out of the mind of Jan Pinkava in 2001, who before made the animated short Gurgi's Game. He pretty much planned out everything for this movie: the design, the characters, the sets, even the main storyline. However, later on, John Lasseter and the other people down at Pixar management felt that not only was Jan's story lacking something, but also that they didn't feel like Jan was ready to become a director. So sometime after the release of The Incredibles in 2005, John went to ask Brad Bird to be in charge of the project instead of Jan, which Brad agreed because he thought the idea was fantastic. As for Jan in this case, well, after the replacement was made, he quit Pixar. Now that Brad is back at Pixar, his first mission was to fix up the story. Not only did he rewrote the entire thing, but he also changed the location of the rats from the catacombs to the sewers, killed off Gusteau, gave a bigger part to Colette and Skinner, and redesigned the rats to make them look more like, well, a rat. To get the feeling of Paris while watching the film, Brad and some of the crew visited the French city for a week and took a motorcycle tour around the place. Also, since this is a movie revolving around fancy food, they went and ate at 5 of the best restaurants in Paris. I guess this would be the only excuse for living the godforsaken rich life.
Monsieur Bird, are you absolutely certain that ordering everything on the menu?
Don't worry, dude, I am absolutely sure about this. Besides, it's for research.
J'espère que cette recherche n'est pas à propos qu'on utilise la crotte de pigeon dans notre sauce.
When looking for the voice of Remy, Brad listened to a stand-up bit by Patton Oswalt about the Black Angus Steakhouse, and at that point, he knew Patton was the one.
At Black Angus, we'll start you off with our appetizer platter, featuring 5 jumbo deep-fried Gulf shrimp, served on a disc of salted butter, with 15 of our potato bacon bombs and a big bowl of pork cracklings with our cheese and butter dipping sauce. You're like, we're all gonna split that. Oh, you'll each get your own!
As for Remy's voice, Emile, they brought in animator Peter Son to do the temporary scratch voice. It turned out that the voice matched so much like the character itself that they decided to keep Peter to be the actual voice. Another case that was very similar to this was artist Lou Romano as Linguini. When making the rats look more like what they're supposed to be, they brought in Debbie Ducomin, aka the Rat Lady, to talk about the characteristics and what makes a rat a rat. Also, they kept several pet rats throughout the studio for the animators to examine and learn about the movements of rats. In order for the animators to save time and money, none of the human characters were made with toes. Sounds weird, I know, but trust me, a round foot can go a long way. But enough about rats and toeless feet, let's get into something that's more about the movie, like food. In order to make the food look good in the movie, not only did they consulted some gourmet chefs, but the animators also took some cooking lessons and even cooked alongside chef Thomas Keller at his restaurant, French Laundry. Not only that, but set and layout manager Michael Warsh stepped in to help the crew animate the food, since he also has a culinary degree. Originally, in contrast to the film's release, they wanted to make a French wine based on the movie called Chardonnay Bourgogne, and it would have been sold all around Costco stores. But the California Wine Institute rejected the idea because they're afraid of having a cartoon character on a label will encourage underage drinking. Well, that sucks. I guess I'll have to go with all the other rejected Pixar drinks like Woody's Roundup Whiskey, Mike and Sully's Monster Shots, and the good old Rum and Crush. How I miss them so. Anyways, another thing they did to prepare for its release, and this time it happened, was that the marketers were worried that people would not know how to say the title properly. So to fix that, They put the title phonetically right under the actual title so that people can say it right. Well, I don't see the point of that, really. I mean, who's going to mispronounce Ratatouille? When it was released on June 29th, 2007, it brought Pixar back on its feet as a total powerhouse. The critics absolutely loved the film, saying that they really enjoyed its fast pace, great humor, and memorable characters. In the box office, it earned more than $206 million domestically and almost $624 million worldwide. It even set a new record in France for the biggest debut for an animated film. At the Academy Awards, it got 4 nominations including Best Original Score, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Original Writing, and it won for Best Animated Feature. As an added bonus, the film also won a Golden Globe, a BAFTA, and 9 Annies, all of which, except for the other 8 Annies, were for Best Animated Feature. In 2009, Disney made a 6-inch audio animatronic of Remy that interacts with guests at Les Chefs de France restaurant at Epcot in Walt Disney World.